Welcome.
Yeah, hi, guys.
You look very dapper today in your red bow tie.
Yes, I'm just from a very important meeting in the Polish government. Sorry for my outfit. It's unnatural. Very something.
Well, I didn't intend this was my first question for you, but I'm wondering, did you tie it or is it a clip on?
No, that's a clip on. Yes, I'm too lazy. Be frankly speaking, I'm too lazy.
All right. And we want to hear all about what you've been doing and where you've been going and how progress is going with the Congress. But obviously, the first question of the day is your thoughts on President Zelensky's visit to Washington and any thoughts you have on his speech and his address to Congress.
I actually cannot say too much about this because I was traveling last 5 days permanently, uh, and I obviously knew that he was coming to States. Not for a very long time. I learned that this is to happen, but I learned it beforehand. So I was mainly collecting the feedback. So I didn't even look at President Zelensky's speech myself. I just talked to several Congress people. What did they think? Uh,
And
uh, it- they were, uh, mm, uh, they were probably extreme.
we're losing you, Ilya. Um, I'm going to have, let's see if we picked you back up. I think
I
you,
can see and hear you perfectly well.
it might be me. So, are you getting, I think you were just talking about feedback from members of the US Congress. Are you hearing things from both inside Russia and Ukraine in terms of reaction?
No, from Ukraine, people are very excited. Ukraine people usually compare what did happen in Washington, D.C. as Tehran 1943,
Hmm.
like the culmination of war, where the main reason for Zelensky to actually leave the country and go to the United States was to actually start planning post-war situation. That's kind of the main idea. I am not so sure whether that's an accurate take on what's going on actually.
Yes.
But I think that definitely there are certain parallels. And what I see myself and what I was doing these days, I definitely see that different countries really started to think about post-war situation, which they were not doing before, and right now they do, and that's very important.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because there was, before you came on, I was talking about one. I lost it here on my screen. There was one statement in the speech. You may not have even heard about this yet, but it stuck out as being different from everything else he talked about. And I'm going to read you the statement because it made me frankly think of you. He said, the Russians will stand a chance to be free only when they defeat the Kremlin in their minds.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
It's
Have others brought that particular phrase up to you as being significant to them? Well, okay. So let me see if I can read. Maybe he's
Yes.
coming back.
Oh,
Let's see.
I'm sorry. I don't know why internet goes up and down. I see that my Wi-Fi link is weak for some reason. So it's Wi-Fi that goes up and down. But yeah, I totally agree with what Zelensky said. I think that needs to be done, and obviously he is um, an actor, uh, a public person, likes to speak in metaphors. to defeat them in somebody's minds. My mind, we need to defeat it
Yeah.
physically. Uh, and you know, we don't want to burn to burn the historical monument to ashes, obviously, but that's where the metaphors come in. And yes, metaphorically speaking, we should burn them down.
I thought that it
It's
was,
like it's like Bastille in France during Great French Revolution. It's something like this. So we need to get rid of the symbols of the empire. We need to move on.
so let's talk about what you've been doing. I've been following you on social media and Telegram. I know others have as well. You have been it's been almost nonstop travel for you, I think now for a couple of weeks. Tell us about where you've been, what you're doing, and what you're hearing from the people you're meeting with.
Actually, we started a very important process of preparing for the recognition of the Congress of People's Deputies by international governments and parliaments, primarily parliaments. We want to establish formal relationship with international parliaments, and we agreed with already several of them about the formula that they are not giving up the recognition of Putin's government because they do de facto represent Russian state.
Yeah.
And we can do nothing about it before we actually defeat them at the field of war. But they do represent Russian state. They usurped the power. They grabbed the power. It's illegal, but they do represent the state. And obviously, many countries, they need to continue dealing with the state to solve one or another issue. But we are discussing with them recognition of the Congress as the legitimate representative of Russian people, because Putin obviously is not the legitimate representative of Russian people. He is the usurper of power. He illegally changed the constitution. He falsified the elections. So all his vertical of power is illegal. It's also elected, even from the formal standpoint of view of international legislation, it's elected in part on the occupied territories, which is making the ultimate results of the elections void and illegitimate. And this is something that has been recognized by international community. The last election was in.
All right. We're going to patiently wait for Ilya to reconnect. We know that it's because of his Wi-Fi. I think he said he's in Poland. In the meantime, I'm putting oh, he's back. Okay, great. Now am I the only one who cannot hear Ilya? And now he's frozen. Okay. I'm going to talk until we hear his voice again. I just put a link. Yeah, no sound. Lily, I'm with you on that. I just put a link in the, he's going to try to fix that. I just put a link in the chat box, and I just realized I can give you a live link. He's talking about the Congress, oh, we got you back. Great. No, we didn't. Okay. We're going to hang on and see if we get Ilya back. I'm going to give you that link as a live link. It's the Congress that Ilya has been talking about. I'm trying to see if I have it as a live link. Lucas, are you here by any chance? If you are, Ilya, I may have to re-invite you. I'm going to kick you out and re-invite you just in case that helps solve the problem. I'm sorry, everybody, for the difficulties with the internet right now, but we're trying to overcome that. The Congress that Ilya is talking about, I will give some background on that as we're trying to reconnect with him. This is the Congress of People's Deputies of Russia. Those of you who are regulars to the show know that they met for the first time in early November, so about 6 weeks ago, in Warsaw. And when Ilya talks about the illegitimacy of the Putin government and the legitimacy of the Congress itself, and hold on while I'm talking, I'm trying to see if I can get Ilya back in here. Hold on a sec. We're trying hard here. Okay. Where, so the illegitimacy, let's see if he actually can get back on here because he can obviously do a better job of explaining this than I can. As he said, the illegitimacy of Putin's regime has to do with changes to the constitution, being elected not in free and fair elections, other things, which I'm sure he could go into much more depth about. The legitimacy of the Congress is it's made up of deputies. Now, there he is. Excellent. Well, maybe not excellent. We're hearing a loop. Yeah, we're hearing the cartoon voice, Ilya. We've had this trouble before. Yes, it often has to do with your earbuds. All right, not our best moment technically. No, we still have you as a cartoon. Can you use yeah, can you use the microphone on your computer or phone? Here he's trying. All right, I'm going to keep talking here. And I'm really surprised I don't have a link for the Congress that's live that you can just, oh, here it is right here. So the legitimacy of the Congress comes from, and you have to kind of let this sink in because it's a little bit complicated, but once you understand it, it makes perfect sense. By the way, the link I just put in the chat box, you can click that. It's blue and it will take you right to the Congress's webpage, which by the way, was originally only in Russian and there's now an English translation and it is full of incredible information. I visit it every morning to see what's been updated. Here he is. We can't hear you. No, we can't hear you. Can't hear you. All right. So, well, okay, there you go. Well, thanks everybody for your patience while we try to sort this out. It's been a while since we've had these troubles with Ilya that used to happen with some frequency. I'm going to keep talking again. We'll see if he can rejoin. I'm going to try and get through a full thought here before interrupted. So the legitimacy for the delegates, there's about 60 of them. There were close to 60 of them in Warsaw. I was at what they called the first Congress of People's Deputies. They're now planning the second Congress, but this group, particularly the executive committee that was elected at the Congress, has been meeting online, I think almost daily. And just to give you some insight, the reason Ilya is traveling with other members of the Congress is to go to other countries, as he was alluding to begin to build their, begin to get their acknowledgement as a legitimate part of the Russian government. This is very, very important. I want to tell you who the delegates are, and then I'm going to tell you how this Congress came to be formed. There's a much bigger vision for it, but I think you'll be fascinated by what the impetus for starting the Congress was. So the delegates, if you take what Ilya said about, Putin changed the constitution, he was not legitimately elected. All of this began around 2014. So every member of the Congress, every delegate of the Congress is someone who was elected let me try to let Ilya back in. Hold on one sec. And then he can critique my explanation of the Congress. Hold on here. Okay. So, Ilya, even if you can't join us and we can't hear you, you can correct me in the chat box if you want. Each of the members of the Congress, I know I keep getting interrupted and I'm sorry this is so injured. There he is. Let's see. We're going to give it one more try.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Sorry. Voice.
Yes. All right. Let me finish this thought about who the delegates are. You can jump in.
You are perfect.
So I just want to finish this before we move back to what you're doing. The delegates were all elected officials in Russia, elected by the people before 2014. So part of the position of the Congress is these are the last legitimately elected representatives of the people that Russia has. And that's part of, or maybe wholly, you'll explain, Ilya, the reason why they bring legitimacy as a body that Putin cannot offer and will not offer because he has no interest in being legitimately elected. How'd I do?
That's perfect. It's perfect. Really. No, indeed. I wouldn't say that he has no interest. He has a lot of interest in being legitimate, and he pays a lot of attention to explain to everybody that he is legitimate, but he is not.
Yeah,
and that's the fact of his life, and nobody else. And that's why we are trying to get into the situation.
Would it be fair to say that he has interest in being perceived as legitimate, but he actually doesn't have interest in doing the things that would make him legitimate?
No, that's correct. No, but he believes that he's legitimate.
Yes.
I think that he genuinely believes that he is right.
So tell us about what you've been doing and the reception you're getting from these different parliaments of other countries.
Obviously, for us, two key governments, two key parliaments are the parliaments of Ukraine and Poland, because according to international, I will say it's not a rule, but it's a very well-established tradition. So when people are talking about a shadow governments or parliaments, about shadow powers, that the first to recognize should be the host country where it's physically located. And we physically locate in two countries. Obviously, the main office that we have is in Ukraine, and the second one is in Poland, where the conventions are happening. And that's why these two countries are to start the process. And we are paying a lot of attention to them, and we think that we are progressing very nicely in terms of getting some formal decisions. I cannot say more in public at this moment, but the news would soon arrive. And then we were informing other countries. We started informing other countries, started from the Baltic states, because they are probably the most radical, and they are not afraid of the concept of the regime change in Russia, which is important. And we informed about what we are doing, and agreed on a certain roadmap how we can get to this point of having official relations established between us. And our next circle of connections, obviously, other Eastern European states, and then just other countries of the world which are members of anti-Putin coalition. We already petitioned and sent formal letters to United States, to Great Britain, to European Union, and we are going to do the follow-up after the holidays will be over.
I'm going to ask what may be a naive question, but is there within other countries like the US, is there actually a process, a sort of known or formalized process for a group by you to go through to get recognized by other governments?
No, obviously there is no formal process. There are just some precedents in the past. For example, the most well-known precedent of the recent past was the recognition of Guaido government in Venezuela, which some may say was a successful example. Some may argue that it was a failure. Nevertheless, in terms of what we are doing, it is an obvious success because that's where the international community made a bet on the changes in the country, and it didn't work out because I think choice was wrong in general. The moment was wrong, but it was nevertheless an attempt which set the precedent which we can follow. In Eastern Europe recently, there is an example of Svetlana Tikhanovskaya of Belarus,
Mhm.
the famous opponent of Alexander Lukashenko. But in general, there were numerous other examples in the past. The war countries of Asia, there were even like also very well known example during World War II. Example of, for example, Poland, where the legitimate government was residing in London. But probably the most successful story of the same period was the government of de Gaulle. And de Gaulle was a general who had his military units fighting together alongside with anti-Hitler coalition. And he also was coordinating the resistance movement in um, France. And at the end of the day, both the government and the resistance movement and the army became the full-fledged government, full-fledged army, and a lot of civil society went out of the resistance movement. And that's the best example for us to follow. That's what we are trying to recreate very much at this moment.
I'm assuming that when you begin with the meetings, obviously with Ukraine and Poland and then the Baltic states, that part of the idea here is that once one and then two governments recognize you as legitimate, there will be a network effect. And that getting it's like in sales, getting the first sale is often the hardest. The second is a challenge. And after that, it gets a lot easier because everybody's afraid to be first.
Yeah, I fully agree. And as I said, that's why it's extremely important that the host country as Ukraine and Poland would make a move. And I'm very confident that that would happen soon. And after that, the Baltic states would obviously be next, and then the others.
You mentioned earlier on having heard from some, I think you said we were having a little Wi-Fi trouble, but I think you had said that you had been in contact with some members of the U.S. Congress about Zelensky's uh, visit yesterday. I'm wondering if you can share with us, without revealing any names, the kind of feedback you're getting from your friends and relationships inside governments like the US and perhaps France and even the UK.
It's in general that's American national character is to be very emotional and say, "Wow, of course, so we are really inspired and we have moved and we're the great guy, and this kind of things, But first of all, it was way more large scale than usual. That's why I think that uh, uh, being distilled, the reaction is pretty genuinely positive.
Yes.
Secondly, I think that it was a strong reason for Zelensky to come to the States. And I know some of the things that they were talking behind the closed doors. And they're very practical. And what I have heard from my sources in the Ukrainian government, in the office of the president, everything was decided positively. And that's very good. But, that's about the most important and short-term decisions on the military cooperation.
Yes.
Military and financial, yes. But I'm not so sure whether the issues of long-term strategy were really discussed. I think they were, at least they were planned to be discussed. But I don't know into which details the leaders actually went in such discussions, and what would be the long-term outcome, because I know that they had to discuss the approach towards future of Russia and whether the Ukrainian army is attacking targets on the Russian soil in general. This kind of like red lines, the boundaries, the limits. Um, uh, it should have been discussed, and I think that when we all are back in Ukraine, myself, the president, and his team, I probably would learn from his team, what they have decided.
I want to ask you one last question before I let you go. There was obviously a lot of pomp and circumstance around the visit yesterday, including, much to my surprise, he shows up in Air Force One. I don't know if that's ever happened before for another world leader. I am assuming that a lot of that pomp and circumstance was for an audience of one, Mr. Putin. A, do you agree with that? Do you think that's correct? And B, did you think, or do you think there will be a retaliation against Ukraine as a result of this? Is there some, excuse the expression, shit about to hit the fan as a reaction to this?
I think it would not be a kind of an immediate reaction. I think that the retaliation is not so much coming about the Air Force One. What could Putin do in this regards? To send his Russian Air Force as a suicide bomber? I'm not sure.
Right.
But I think that the major retaliation is coming when we are talking about the, firstly, a significant weapons deliveries to Ukraine. Also, when some really successful.
Uh-oh. Well, maybe that is a good time for us to wrap it up. I don't know if it's Ilya's frozen on your screen, but he's frozen on. There
Yeah.
he is.
And I think that this major offensive of Ukrainian military should have been discussed when in this. And that very much could be the discussion over the offensive in Crimea, because this is one of the psychological red lines for Americans, not for Ukrainians, but for
Yes.
Americans, because everybody is afraid that if Ukrainian army would go into Crimea, that Putin may strike back with the nuclear force, which I personally do not believe, but nevertheless, this possibility exists. And that's why, obviously, for the Kremlin, it would look like if right now this visit and then Patriots are delivered and then Ukrainian army goes into Crimea, that would be, the dots that are connected
Yes.
one to another. And that's why I think this kind of thing should have been discussed, between two leaders.
Is there anything you want to add today before I let you go?
Probably to congratulate everyone with the upcoming Christmas we're celebrating and the New Year. And I think that the next year would be extremely important. Actually, 2022 was a very tragic year, but it was a year when I think all the major changes were planted. And in 2023, we will see fruits.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ilya, I'm going to let you go. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thanks for your persistence with the technology. Happy holidays to you and your family. And for everybody else, stick around for a few minutes. I've got a couple other things I want to just tell you about before we go. And I think I have successfully set you free, Ilya. So we'll see what happens here. And
Thank you very much. Peace and prosperity for everyone in the new year. Thank you, guys. Thank
And let's see if he is able to. We're having little tech challenges here. I think I'm just going to wrap it up for everybody there. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, or whatever. There we go. Whatever holiday is what you and your family celebrate. I hope it's a wonderful one. I know I don't have to tell you that, particularly now, it's cold, it's the holidays, keeping the people of Ukraine in your mind. I don't have to remind you to do that because I know you're already doing it, but I wanted to just say it as sort of a group hug thing, kind of a thing. I know we're all aligned on that. I wanted to mention one other thing, and I wanted to say this without Ilya here, because he may disagree, but I don't. I really wanted it to be between you and I. I hope if you watched the press conference yesterday, or you watched the speech to Congress last night, or you're watching what's happening in the reactioning on social media and in the news today, my sense is that this was it was designed for a lot of pragmatic reasons that Ilya talked about. These are two world leaders that have a lot to talk about, and there's a lot of important issues for them to make sure they're aligned on. And I think it was, as President Biden said last night during the press conference, he in particular really values face to face and eye to eye with people. And I think for him to have the ability to reconnect with President Zelensky that way was very, very important for both of them, frankly. But I want to point out, and again, you may disagree and Ilya may disagree, and I didn't want to get into a debate about it. So I wanted to save it for when I control the stage, which is now. I just wanted to point out that I think a lot of what happened was for, sometimes you hear the expression, an audience of one. If it was for an audience of one, that audience would have been Vladimir Putin. But I think it was actually for an audience of two. I think the first audience was Vladimir Putin. Yes, I think a lot of things that happened were done, frankly, to piss him off and irritate him and make him feel small. And I bet it was very successful in that way. Again, I think sending Air Force One for Zelensky was, I don't know about you, but I heard military jet. I didn't realize it was going to be military jet. But equally important, I think, as I said, I think this was designed for an audience of two. And I think the other audience this was designed for, and designed deliberately and intentionally by both the Zelensky team and the Biden team, I think that other audience, Putin being the audience of one, the audience of two being you. I think this was largely designed, the pomp and circumstance part of it, the part in front of the camera, I think it was designed for you. I think in Ukraine, the Zelensky team knows how important you are to their success. I think the Biden administration knows how important you are to their success, because Zelensky's been an incredible leader. The Ukrainians have been incredibly resilient and persistent and fearless and heroic. But the thing that brought them together, I believe, is that you spoke out over and over and over again, and millions of others like you, and I'm including myself in that group. Things are the way they are in Ukraine to some degree because we did not just stand by and watch the invasion happen, but we made our voices heard loud, long, and persistently. And so I think a lot of this was done, in some ways, I'm going to maybe even say an audience of three. You're the audience, the second audience, to make sure you know that what you've been doing is important. And what's the audience of three? Lily, I like your comment. I go away. Let's make that an audience of four. He's number four. Yeah. But I think the third audience is the people around us. For instance, I met a doctor at an event recently and told her that I had just been to Poland for the Congress and that I had written this book with Ilya and about Ilya and what Ilya was doing. And her response, I think, is we live in a bubble, those of us who are fighting on behalf of Ukraine. But let's not forget, it's not a very big bubble. And what this doctor, a well-educated, well-informed person said to me, and I think she represents the much larger population of my country and probably yours. She said, "Are they still doing that in Ukraine?" She had no clue. She had no clue. And I think so if there's an audience of 4, if you'll accept that notion, yeah, exactly. OMG. I was shocked. And by the way, not the first person who has said something to me along those lines of, "Is that still going on? That's not over yet." It's just, and you can think back in your own past to other conflicts in the world where you were, I'm sure most of us can think back to, "Oh yeah, I heard about that. Whatever happened to that?" And this one has been different. It wasn't just I heard about that, whatever happened about that. Back burner, Lily, yeah. Kind of like, for a lot of people, the annexation of Crimea was "Oh yeah, I heard about that. Whatever happened to that?" And the reason we are where we are today is, yes, because of Zelensky, yes, because of the Ukrainians. But a lot of it is because we have social media and we've used it. We have voices, really. Social media is just an amplification of our voices. We have voices and we've used them. And we didn't use them for a week. Often there's a protest for a week and then everybody goes back to their normal life. We didn't do that. If you were here in the beginning of me doing shows, this was my biggest concern, was that we would stay committed, but that the rest of the world would forget. Now, Ukraine has not let them forget. They've been brilliant in that execution, but they couldn't have done it without us. So I hope as you watched those events yesterday, you realized it was an acknowledgement of you, but it was probably also a sign that we still have a lot of work to do. Because next time I see that doctor, I want her to say to me, "OMG, I've been watching what's happening. And I told 10 friends about what's happening. And they told 10 friends about what's happening." So that our bubble gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Because even as President Zelensky, yeah, it's still topical in political circles, but what about the rest of the world? It's still topical on Twitter, but what about the rest of the world? And I think that's a lot of what President Zelensky was talking about. We are united, but it's not all of us. A lot of us are just in the dark. Not us, but a lot of people around us are just in the dark. And it's understandable. It's easier to just live your life. There's a lot going on. That's absolutely right. So I just wanted to bring that up as as an acknowledgement of you and your contributions. I want to encourage you to keep going. I want to encourage you to keep talking to people. I'm going to close this by, I know you all know this if you're regulars, but just reminding you that we do a show every Wednesday, thematically very much in line with what I've just been talking about and what we were just talking about with Ilya. It's called Tyranny Today, Thomas Nadrowski. I just put a link to the show every Wednesday at 11 o'clock. So the same Eastern, so the same time as the show today, Wednesday instead of Thursday. If you go to that page, you can see each show has been archived. Yesterday's show was archived just a few hours after it ended. This show will be archived sometime between now and tomorrow morning. So you can not only go there and sign up for the next shows, you can share that link. That's a web page that you can go to for the show. You can share that link with your friends and family so they can join us. They can't join us live. They can go there and watch the archive shows. You can grab the video from there and post it on social media. There's all kinds of great stuff you can do. Our work is not done. Yeah, we deserve a pat on the back, and I think we got it yesterday, but our work is not done because things in Ukraine are not set. They're not resolved. There is not peace. There is not victory. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to stop until there's victory. I hope you'll join. So I'm going to wrap it up there. I hope everyone has a wonderful, wonderful Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever holiday your family may be celebrating. And we'll see you again next week. And thank you again for me.